Hey y'all, it's 11:50, so we're gonna get started. People trickle in, we'll be fine. We're just gonna say hello to all of our virtual participants too. So we have a robust group of folks that are joining us hybrid. So my name is Dr. Amy Lopez, and I'm not gonna bore you with my whole bio. Just give you a little snippet so that you understand. I do have some experience in working with the students population that you're working with. I started off my career as a public school teacher. So, believe it or not, my original degree was in theater, which I use every day, by the way. So, my dad did not waste that money, right? And then I ended up in administration in a public school. So, I was assistant principal and then a principal. And then my youngest child was graduating from high school, and I was empty nest and single and decided I wanted to live somewhere warmer. Right now, I live in the DC area, but you can probably tell by my accent, I'm not a DC native. I'm from Texas. And I was living in Amarillo, wanted to live somewhere warmer, so I applied for jobs Austin and South and ended up as the principal of a school inside a maximum security prison here in Texas down on the coast. So it was lovely. In Texas, we incarcerate youth from the ages of 10, now it's 19, at the time it was 21, in maximum security prisons, just so you know. It's a kind of a harsh system. So every one of those prisons had a school. I was the principal of that one school. I did that a year. And then the next year I was promoted to be superintendent over all those schools. I did that 5 or 6 years. And then the man who had recruited me to come do that had then gone to the adult prison system and recruited me to go there. So I was the associate superintendent of the Wyndham School District, which in Texas is the agency that provides all educational opportunities to those folks who are incarcerated in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. So the adult system, which, by the way, when I got there, had 5,000 youth in it. So it's kind of a crazy system. So you have it all across the board, right? I was there about a year and a half, and then I got a really odd phone call from a woman named Sally Yates, and she was the Deputy Attorney General for President Obama at the time. And she asked me if I would be willing to come to DC and talk to her about a possible project. So I was embarrassed I didn't know who she was, but when she offered to pay for a trip to DC, I said yes. So I went. And I was appointed to build a school district inside the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I wasn't a political appointment, but I was there about 5 months when the next administration, well, I was only there, I was barely got there when the next administration came in. And it took them about 5 months to realize I was there, and then I got fired. So, so I didn't build anything, but I really loved DC. And I don't suggest this as a career pathway, but I will say getting hired and fired really publicly is great for job offers. So I got a lot of job offers. People didn't even know I'd existed before that. But I stayed in DC, and I stayed for less money and less prestige because DC only has a jail. They don't have a prison anymore. So Congress shut their prison down in the early 2000s. Small population, but the director that had just been appointed there was like 39. I swear to goodness, he's my little brother from some other life. I don't know. I just loved him. Started his career as a teacher, believe it or not, was running the DC Department of Corrections. And when I finally just called everybody that offered me jobs and said, give me your best shot because I got to have a paycheck on September 1, he said, I can't match the money. We're not a big system, but we have zero education. And so if you come, I will just leave you alone. You can do whatever you want unless you need support. And I was like, well, how does a girl say no to that? So I stayed. And also, I really loved DC in the area. And so I mean, I graduated from a high school of 50 kids. So when I moved to DC, I was like, hot darn, this is a city. It's like a real city. It's awesome. So I really loved it. And then I did that for about 5 years. And when Quincy, my director, left, I also decided. So those of you who are around my age, you know how this goes. My mom was ailing, and I knew I didn't have much more time with her. And the pandemic had happened, and I could not go see my children. They lived across the country as much as I used to. So they all decided to move to be with me. And suddenly, my single girl apartment in DC that seemed really spacious was really tight and not swinging at all. So I had, not that it really was before, but really wasn't then. So I had my my daughter, who is my lovely IT assistant over here, decided she and her husband and two babies to move there so that we kind of had a village to raise these grandbabies. And I didn't want to leave. And then my son called and said, "What the heck? How's that? That's not fair. Everybody's moving there." So he quit his job and moved there. So we bought a huge 150-year-old Victorian house in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We have a half-acre yard. We have now 6 people in the house, 2 dogs, 3 cats, 4 bunnies, and 13 chickens. So I just say we took West Texas hick and we just moved it right to downtown Gaithersburg, Maryland. It's a really lovely existence. So when I quit at the DOC there in DC, I went ahead and just launched my own consulting business and thought we'll give that a shot. So I help states to build educational programming for their residents. And then I help stakeholders that really want to do that work but can't get their foot in the door because they don't speak prison, right? I help them do that. I teach at George Washington University a class called Prison Power and Punishment. And everything I do is all around reform of the criminal justice system. Not that we don't need to have consequences for actions, but that I worry about who our laws target and how long people are incarcerated and what we do specifically with really young people. And then I also launched a nonprofit in the same year, which now I sort of wonder why. Although I love it, it's a lot of work with 2 of my former employees who are also justice impacted, and we work with reentry. Right now, our focus is on emerging adult age, 18 to 24-year-old. Young men and women who are justice impacted are really disconnected from the workforce, from education, and try to get them back on their feet and out of the justice system. So that is me and what I do. So I have a lot of experience in correctional ed that people, so if you Google my website, you'll see all these articles about how innovative I've been, and I've never invented anything. But what I've done is taken things that worked in public school that we know are evidence and research based and adjusted those for inside a correctional facility. And of course, because they're evidence and research based, they were really successful. And then I had to make that jump from juvenile working. I was a secondary ed teacher, so I always worked with, high school, junior high through high school. And then when I went to the Wyndham School District, I had to jump from that to working with adult students and found that a lot of what we use with young people also works with adults with some minor adjustments. So today I'm just going to present one of those strategies, which is about giving adult students choice. So if you're a certified teacher like me, you went through college, you got your certification, and we talked a lot about pedagogy, yes? A lot about pedagogy. And what we do in the adult classroom is still a lot about pedagogy. But as I'm also a former English teacher, the root of that word is about children. So really, when we study pedagogy, we talk about how do children learn. So we learn a lot about child development and then what's the best learning strategies. And we very rarely study andragogy. And in fact, I don't think it was until my doctorate, which is in around the adult education, it's developmental education, it's about teaching adults, that I'd ever even heard the term andragogy. So once I got past college, right, I just doing life and not really studying learning theory. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really based in that theory of andragogy, which I never can remember the man's name is. Malcolm Knowles is the person who actually coined the adult learning theory name andragogy. So one of the, I don't want to talk about the theory a lot. You can study it. And I don't want to dismiss it by boiling it down to 3 or 4 bullet points, but I'm going to boil it down to 3 or 4 bullet points. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Is andragogy says the way that adults learn best and retain knowledge is significantly different than the way children do it. And this is how adults largely like to have their instruction, right? When instruction is relevant to their life, their work, their current, and their future situation. So ultimately, if you ever taught in primary, secondary school, and a kid's like, well, we're going to use algebra, right? And then you got to come up with how a kid's going to use algebra. But adults are the same, except adults are like, am I wasting my time here? Because how is this going to help me be a carpenter? a mechanic, a chef, an IT coder. How's this going to help me parent my children? So adults really want to know, how does this benefit me? And we can, of course, say, we know a GED is going to benefit you. So overall, the reason you're, in a math class talking about fractions is because that's going to help you. But if you can, as an instructor, say, so you want to be a sous chef or a chef, you have to learn how to measure. You have to learn how to do square footage if you're going to be a house builder. All of these things. If you can take that knowledge that you're giving them and saying, first of all, you need the GED. It's going to up your income. It's going to do all these things, good things for you. So you're in the right pathway. But also, if we go a little more granular, this information is going to help you with whatever their goals are. The second thing is that Knowles found in his research is that adults really love learning when it's problem-centered. They like to come up with solutions. They really want to look at a problem and fix it or come up with the answer. Adults also really love when instruction is self-directed. And we know that it can't be totally self-directed. Even if we're doing online kind of self-paced work, at some point we know that the teacher in the classroom is the number one thing that makes a student really successful over the top. So they do need some direction, even if it's online. But they do like it if you give them shorter periods of, say, these are the instructions and this is the goal, go to it. And they like that type of autonomy. And Knowles' research also showed that adults really love it when instruction builds on their own experience or their experiences. So I try to think of it like this. If you're teaching a child and you presented the term andragogy to them, they'd be like, what the heck is that? I don't know what that is. I don't have any basis for that. But if you talk to an adult and they said, I don't know what that word means, and you said, oh, well, it's like, the way adults learn. So how I teach. They have some sort of framework or some frame of reference to build on that. If nothing else, they've been in school for more years than a child. What I'm trying to get at that. So they really love it if you don't go in with instruction and just assume they know absolutely nothing, because they don't know absolutely nothing. They've heard something, they've read something, they've seen a TV show, something. Adults have some sort of frame of reference or experience. And if you can build on that, then you're way more successful at capturing their attention and making the learning stick. So autonomy is really key in Knowles' research about adult learning. So when we give adults control over their learning path, it builds intrinsic motivation. And in a correctional setting where autonomy is kind of rare, right, where they don't get to choose much of anything that goes on in their day, given a student choice, even if it's in a small way, can really be empowering and transformative. So today we're going to talk about just one strategy that you can use in the classroom in various ways to give these students autonomy and choice, and that is a choice menu. So we're just going to start with the basic. I did the poll, and a couple of people had used choice menus, others haven't. So just put it really simply, a choice menu is going to be a list of tasks or activities that a student can choose from to show mastery, right? So let's say you teach a lesson, you pass out a worksheet that has problems on it or essay instructions, and all of the students give that back to you. A choice menu might have that on the menu, but it would also have other things on there that the student could choose from. So it's a list, right? And this one is a tic-tac-toe menu. We're going to go into these in detail in a second so that you can really see how they work. So choice menu is just a structured selection of tasks that learners can choose from to meet your learning objectives and show you that they've mastered the material. So here are the benefits of choice for learners. It increases engagement and ownership. It taps into different learning styles, encourages responsibility and goal setting, builds confidence and independence. This is one of my favorite pictures. I put together a newspaper at the DC DOC, and I was able to have co-ed classes, and this was our first newspaper team. So they did it all too. And then benefits of choice for teachers. It enables differentiation without recreating content. Do you feel like you're teaching in the one-room schoolhouse a lot of days? If you have 5 language arts GED students, one may not read at all, and the other one could read at a college level but just dropped out in 9th grade and never went back, is ready for his GED, and you've got to figure out how to differentiate your instruction so you can differentiate the tasks in a really easy way if you use a choice menu. It also promotes classroom management because adult students are going to get that pathway and they're going to go at it, right? So they're working. It helps with behavior management because I'm going to show you an option to use a choice menu as incentives for behavior that you want to see instead of having to rely on punishing for behavior you don't want to see. And it also provides an easy structure for early finishers or supplemental work. So if you don't want to use a choice menu for the whole class, you can have a set aside. So if somebody finishes early, they need to go pick a choice menu, pick something from the choice menu, and they're busy. So they're not just sitting and they're moving forward. So let's talk a little bit about differentiation. So menus allow students to approach the same learning standard at different levels of complexity because on each menu, you're going to use different modalities, activities that are aligned to different levels of Bloom's taxonomy, or if you are more in the Webb's depth of knowledge arena and like that, you would design it that way. You're going to design different learning style activities that appeal to different learning styles. So on one menu, students could choose from something that appeals to a visual learner, an auditory learner, kinesthetic learner. You may have reading and writing, all of the different modalities in that way. And you can also, if you're interested in multiple intelligence work and differentiating in that way, you can do that as well. So on one menu, the students are going to have choices that appeal to how they learn best and what they want to do. But you're still getting mastery level for your objective. All right, so menu types and formats. I've seen a whole lot of different ones, but these are some of the most common ones. Is a tic-tac-toe board. We're going to go over that one. Also, I had a teacher once that used restaurant-style menus. She took it really literally. And students could choose one activity from the appetizer menu, and one from the main course, and one from the dessert. And the students loved it. And this, I used this in juvenile settings, but all the stuff I'm going to give you today, I've used in adult settings specifically. They loved it, thought it was really fun. You can have point-based choices, which makes grading a little easier for you and choices a little easier for students. And then for behavioral, we'll talk about incentive lists. All right, let's dig in. Components of a good choice menu. A good menu aligns with your learning objectives, so don't make it random, make it purposeful. A good menu is going to offer a mix of modalities. You're going to balance challenge and support. So do you need students to just regurgitate information from memory? Sometimes you do, right? A-okay to put that on a menu. If that's one of your objectives, I just need to know you've memorized these things or that you recognize these things. And then if you want something more challenging where they're actually evaluating and analyzing, you put that task on there too. So a good menu has a mix of those things. So you're forcing the students to do a little bit of both. And then obviously a good menu has clear directions and expectations so the students know what to expect. So products is the term I'm going to use for the tasks or activities because students are actually going to give you something. So even a worksheet or a quiz or a survey might be what I'm going to term a product. So when you're thinking about those different types of learning modalities, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and then if you want to add a reading and writing as a separate one. So when you think about visual learners, you have to think about what are they going to give you as a product? Is it an infographic? Is it a poster, an acrostic poem if you're teaching language arts, an auditory? And I'm trying to be mindful of when you're in a correctional facility where you can't let them go and do a web quest or something like that. So auditory may just be an interview, an oral presentation. They get up and give a speech. Kinesthetic, you're creating activities where they're actually moving their bodies or it's hands-on. So maybe they have to create a skit or they have to model a certain skill for you, maybe complete an experiment, anything that's hands-on. And then, of course, reading and writing. But it can be a variety of things. Language arts teachers are the best at coming up with different ways to have students write. But it could be essays, research, poetry, any of the things that you maybe use now in your class, but you could mix it up a little bit on a menu. I did bring these. I'll put these out for you. This is one of my favorite authors about menus. Her name is Laurie Westfall, and I've put that in a last slide for you to find. So one of the things that she does is this one is on differentiating instruction with science. And she creates every product she ever uses on a menu, she creates a list of those. And then she literally just lists them all. What's auditory, what's visual, so that she has a running list for herself of what kind of products that she's going to add. And then the next thing you would need to think about are the guidelines. So this is an example from one of Westfall's books. So she has a lot of products. She's really creative. But what she's done is if you're going to put an acrostic task on a menu, the students need to know what the expectation is for that. So she just outlines really quickly the expectations and then she creates a rubric. But this way the students know exactly what they have to produce and how they're going to be graded. So like for an acrostic, she says has to be at least on 8.5 by 11, needs to be neatly written. And if your students have computers, fine. If not, fine. And then the target word will be written down the left side, and each descriptive phrase chosen must begin with one of the letters, so on and so forth. She does a lot of things like board games. She says that it has to have a minimum of these things. And it's important that the students know what the product is and that you introduce that to them before they pick, because they may pick something that sounds like fun and then they look at it and they're like, oh, heck no, I'm not doing all that work, or I don't have the talent to do that, or I don't know how to do that, or whatever. So she really lists out every product that's going to go on the menu, and then the students can look at the menu and look at the product expectations and decide. So again, it's just very clear about what you're expecting from the student. She also does the same thing with grading rubrics. When I was in the classroom, I used grading rubrics a lot. It just made grading easier and less subjective. So this is an all-purpose rubric that she has in one of her books. But I would if I was doing a choice menu, say I was teaching a novel, and my choice menu was going to be all about that novel, then I would create a grading rubric for that. So it just depends on if you want to use general or if you want to make one specifically, depending on how complicated your tasks are on your menu. But the rubric clarifies the expectations and then allows you to grade fairly across all different products. And just remember to include categories that you really want to grade on, like is the content accurate? You can do one on creativity to give those students that need a little boost in grade because they're creative, but they may struggle somewhere else. You can do that. Or same thing like with effort or on their presentation. But the rubric should include whatever it is you're going to grade on. And then make that rubric available and visible so that students know when I pick, I'm going to create a poster. This is the expectation of what I have to put on there, and this is how I'm going to be graded. And I wouldn't say always, I think I'd been teaching about 5 years before I started really using rubrics. And I was teaching in a small school system at that time, and so I taught a lot of different subjects, and I let them grade themselves. So that last column is a self, and I told them this is how it's worth 10 points. On this one, you're saying you either get full credit, half credit, or no credit at all on these different parts of the rubric, and then I would transfer that into a letter grade or a numeric grade. But guess how they graded themselves 100% of the time? Lower, yes, always lower than I would ever grade them. And so then I would go back and say, why are you giving yourself no credit on that? And it was a great way to have a conversation about, look, this is what I see. This is what I see. I've never one time in my career had a kid or an adult who graded themselves too high. And adults particularly really hard on themselves. So, but it's a great way to make them think about their work too. And you can also give them the option. You grade yourself, and you say, "Oh, I'm not giving myself credit there. Can I go back and work on it a little bit longer?" And you can say yes, or you can say no. And they go back and correct whatever work they're saying. But it's a lot of self-reflection, right? So another reason I like the rubrics, it makes it really easy for me as a teacher when I've got a million products coming in to go through the rubric and grade. And remember, always we're looking for mastery, right? So we're grading for that, but also give them credit for being outside the box, gluing things nicely, I mean, whatever it is that you can do to give them that little boost. All right, so we're about to get to menus. Hang with me just a little bit. But using menus for different purposes. You can use it for enrichment, again, for those students that finish early, or you have mostly a classroom of low literacy and one or two students that are really above that, then you can use that to challenge those other students while you're working with your low literacy folks. Supplemental, you can use it as remediation or skill reinforcement. You can also use menus just as a standard assignment. So the whole class gets the same menu, and then they have to choose. Mini lessons, which is mostly the way I taught before I went into administration, do a mini lesson and give them the choice menu, and they decide how they're going to show mastery. And then as behavioral incentives. I was just thinking of examples that were really cool. When I was teaching I was the principal in the juvenile system, and we had kids up to the age of 22 at that time. And our science test scores were really, really low. So we decided as a campus, we had about 350 students total, all boys, and decided 10 to 22 ages. And we decided to really focus on some basic science skills. And so we read The Hot Zone. I don't know if you've ever read The Hot Zone. It's the story of Ebola, how it was founded in Africa, but it reads like a novel, even though it's nonfiction. And my kiddos had read The Hot Zone in AP Biology as high schoolers. And so I thought, well, we'll give that a shot. And what we did is the whole campus in English classes, our teachers had readers, and they read the novel out loud, and then they did language arts lessons from that novel, and the math folks did lessons from the novel. And then the ultimate project for all the kids was a choice menu. And they could choose the choice menu. And then we did a tic-tac-toe, so they had to choose 3 things from that menu. And we also let them work in pairs or groups of 3. And this helped the lower level kids do higher challenging work. And it was really beautiful at the end. So we had a lot of really great product, a lot of great mastery shown. And our science scores actually went up. But so did all the other scores, because teachers really dug in and made it topic specific. So you can think about the menus in a lot of ways. So what I'm going to show you are just some really standard things, and they're just some activities that I've picked, from different places and put on there. So what I don't want you to do is to look at it and say, I'll never be able to do that. My students won't be able to do that. They won't allow me to have that in the facility. So what I'm just going to show you is the framework of the strategy, and then it's your job to make it work for you and your students, okay? So here we go. Oh, yeah, what I just said. Adapt it. Don't put things on there when they can't use scissors in your facility. I mean, I've worked in all levels. I worked at in an agency once that didn't allow students to have staples. We couldn't staple anything. We used a lot of foldables where students tore things and folded it. And then I've worked in places where pretty much whatever I wanted. Well, I was deputy director, so I brought in whatever I wanted. So that was nice. But so it's all levels. So you have to think about safety and security in the tasks that you're giving folks. And also, I know we like to say worksheets are bad. We all know worksheets have their place, right? And a worksheet on a menu is A-OK. So all of those things that we use in all of our instructional strategies can just be placed on a menu. Let's start with tic-tac-toe. So our virtual folks are still hanging with us, I hope. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you ask. And you guys, if you have any questions, just pop up. All right, so tic-tac-toe is really easy. It's got 9 squares, right? Generally, the middle square, I usually make it a free choice. And I had a little slip of paper that were just set in a folder on my desk that was a free choice proposal. So if a student looked at the menu and was like, I can pick some of these things, but I really want to do something else, they could write it as a proposal, submit it to me, and then I would say yes or no, and then we would negotiate how many points that's worth, or depending on the menu. So always put a free choice in the middle if they wanted to. Tic-tac-toe, that's it. They have to choose 3 activities. They have to go up and down, across, or diagonal, just like tic-tac-toe. So here's the thing about a tic-tac-toe menu that's really recommended, that every activity on there is at the same Bloom's taxonomy level, or Webb's depth of knowledge. So this is not the one where you're putting analyze on there with remember, right? You want it to be pretty much in the same 2 levels, so it's across the board. Mainly because it gets really hard for you to figure out the logistics of putting something challenging in the same row as something supportive, and then you got to figure it all out. It's also pretty much similar expectations for completion time and effort. So, and always keep that in mind when you're making a menu, because you don't want to put something that's going to take a student 6 weeks to finish, and you only have 2 weeks on there, so you think about that. So the tic-tac-toe is pretty homogeneous in that way. And this kind of menu can cover one topic, could be one objective, or 3 different objectives. But if you're just using one objective, you can let them pick any pattern you want. But if it's going to be 3 objectives, then you need to make sure in the row that they're covering all 3 of your objectives. So really a tic-tac-toe is a little easier if it's just one learning objective. And this one's really easy for students because they totally understand it. So they pick which 3 they're going to do. You decide whether they work by themselves or in pairs. They submit it to you. You say, yes, that's good, go forth. You tell them the due date, and boom, they're off. So you can see, I know this is hard to read, but this one is on ratios. I mentioned I was a theater major, right? So I don't know if this is working. Yeah, okay. So don't be mad at my math and science suggestions here, but like the first one is, your classmates can calculate ratios, but can they predict them accurately? So create a game show that has participants predicting ratios that can be observed every day. Let's see. And then the next one is to search through newspapers, if you're allowed newspapers, right? To find examples of objects that can be expressed as ratios, fractions, or decimals, and then create a collage of those different examples and write 3 numbers represented by each one: the ratio, the fraction, the decimal. It's still just remembering and giving you back, what they've memorized or what they've learned. It's mastery, but it's a really creative way to do it. Choose your favorite professional team or athlete and research it or their statistics. Prepare a poster, or if you have a computer lab and they have PowerPoint, they could do that. So they're creating a presentation about the statistics and their meanings, and then they have to include a precise prediction about the team's performance in its next game. Students loved that one, so especially the men, especially during March. It's great. But you can see it goes through, this is another thing that Westfall does, is that she'll repeat the same kind of objective for everyday ratios. Here's another one that's everyday ratios, where they're just making a scrapbook or a journal of ratios that they can find in their everyday life. So as they go around their housing units and they go about their day, then they're writing down ratios that they see. So that's pretty much just giving back information. And then there's one for designing a board game. There's one of, you've been given the task to figure out the number of living creatures smaller than 1 centimeter found on a football field. It ends up being ratio. And I think this one was one that a teacher had put on there about, let's see, creating a survey to gather information about a recent controversial topic in the news. And then they surveyed 10 people in the facility and used that information to predict how larger sample size might respond. Get the idea of that one? This one's really easy to create. Yes, ma'am. I can put the slideshow. Yeah, sure can. So the question was for our virtual folks if I could put the PowerPoint slideshow in Whova, and I will do that so you can download it. And then the three sample menus that I'm going to show you today are also in Whova that you can download. I did notice some typos in there because I'm not very efficient at editing my own work, so I corrected them up here, but just know there was no forgiveness in Whova, so that was it. This next one is one I used a lot, and then I about a year ago worked with a group in Texas Advocate Group that were building diversionary programs for 18-year-olds and up, and we used a 258. This one's a 20, 50, 80 as for some of their work, and it was really popular. So the 20, 50, 80, I didn't correct that one, or the 258 menu, it places a numerical value on groups of activities. So students have to choose 2 activities that total 100 points, right? So the choices are assigned points based on Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge. So just as an example, 20-point items might represent remember and understand. 50-point items represent apply and analyze levels, and then the 80-point items represent evaluate and create levels. So if you want to think about easier, medium, harder. So with this menu, students can choose something easy. So they can choose something from the 20-point category. But if they do that to get 100, what else are they going to have to choose? The more challenging. Yeah, they're going to have to choose something from the 80. Or they can choose 2 of the medium ones. And then you can put a free choice in there on the medium or the easy if you want, wherever you want to put it. And then they have to get 80 points. 100 points out of that. And some of these you can see for your remember section. It's design a poster that explains capitalism and socialism and include at least 3 examples of each on your poster. So this would be for social studies and economics. Or create a worksheet that would help your classmates to know the difference between capitalism and socialism. For the medium, look through newspapers or magazines and locate advertisements for products that have been impacted significantly by supply and demand, and then they make a collage. Or they could create a class game that tests their classmates' knowledge of socialism and capitalism and how each philosophy can affect a country. And the last ones, I put in one there that a teacher had done that I thought was really neat. I think it's the first one. Any social group can affect supply and demand, even a population of people who are incarcerated. Determine 2 products on which you and your classmates have had a direct impact while they're incarcerated, right? And then create a news report that interviews a classmate about your peers' impact on the process of supply and demand. And the last one is just to design a product that you think would fill a need for people your age, but then it goes to the course objectives, which are to talk about why it would be in demand. So that's a 258 or a 20, 50, 80. The next one I wanted to look at is a list menu. And this one is a little bit more complex. It has a total of 10 or more choices. I think this one has 14 activities on it. And they're listed with assigned points based on the levels of Bloom's revised taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge. So they carry different weights, and they have different expectations for completion time and effort, and their more points indicate more complex or time-consuming activities. So on this one, a point criterion is set that equals 100%, and then students choose how they want to get to their point goal. So, and it's really small. But so the instructions are, this is science. So again, don't judge me. I had to look up stuff because I'm not a science person. It's on the periodic table. So they can complete as many of the activities as they want within the time period. And they can choose any combination of activities. They have to meet 100 points. And they can, if you want to give them extra points, they can earn however many extra points you want them. You can say, you don't even have to say they do 100 points. So we had a teacher once that let them choose what they wanted to make. And then I always had the student that said, no, I'm just going to do enough to make a 70 because all I need to do is pass. And then she said, well, better be perfect. every single one of them, or you fail. And then he's like, well, I better probably ought to shoot for 80. And then the way she'd done the points is he couldn't get 80. So he had to go up to 90. I mean, so you can do that. But if you want to let them settle for something less than 100, I mean, are we okay with 80% mastery? Absolutely. That's fine. That's fine. You can do that. And then you can be as creative as you want. This is to the students within the guidelines below. And again, they would have their product list. So whatever it is, they know what they have to do to meet the minimum. And then you have to show your plan to me by a date. So they list, these are the ones I plan to do. And then the activities can be turned in anytime before that. And I will, on your grading sheet, give you those points so that you can see your earning as you go, or you can do them all at the end, but you have a final due date of whatever. So this one just gets tricky in that you need to think about how much is this, how many points is this worth, right? But if you kind of go by the complexities, it works out. So like the first one is to make a crossword puzzle with at least 20 vocabulary words about the periodic table. That's worth 25 points. And you can complete somebody else's crossword puzzle that they made, and that's 10 points. Let's see, draw a comic strip, make a mobile, showing the families of the periodic table and 3 properties for each. You can make a board game, and a 1 to 2 page essay, explain how you think the periodic table could change in the next 50 years, and then include a drawing of how it might look different. Choose 5 elements whose symbols don't directly match their element's name, and create a set of 5 trading cards for those elements that includes their symbols, why their symbols are obvious. Create a song or rap to help you remember the families and their properties. Create a product of your choice that shows the families of the periodic table and at least 5 characteristics of each. I cheated on all these. I just want you to know. I know you're probably thinking I'm really super smart. No. Choose your favorite family in the periodic table and create a family scrapbook. Include properties of the family as well as the individual elements. Create a 3 to 5 page research paper that explains the history and arrangement of the periodic table. Create 3 facts and a fib for the arrangement of the periodic table. It's only worth 10 points, but write a children's book about the periodic table and its families, or submit a free choice proposal. Runs the gamut, right, of visual, auditory, reading, writing, kinesthetic, and all levels of Bloom's taxonomy that they can choose from. And then the last menu I just wanted to show you is a behavioral incentive menu. And it's not academic, but it can be used in an academic way because you're using it to incentivize behavior. And some of that behavior may be academically oriented. So let's say you have a multidisciplinary team meeting, or if you're working with adults who are still in that IDA category and they have an IEP meeting, you can do that. Or maybe it's just your classroom and you're struggling, with somebody struggling, then you can set an academic goal. And then these could be the incentive that they earn when they meet their academic goal. Largely, I've used this as behavioral incentives. That's not true. Used it equally for academics. So one of the things that I'm really good at is creating systems for students, no matter what age they are or how heavy their offenses are, and creating a safe environment for school. And one of the ways I do that is through positive behavior interventions and supports. If you've ever done any work with PBIS, generally you see it in primary schools, a little bit in secondary schools, but that's it. Never really see it with adults, but really, here's what it is. Teach the behaviors you want to see, reteach when people fall off the wagon, and incentivize the behaviors you want to see instead of constantly punishing for the ones you don't. It's pretty simple, right? PBIS, they make it a lot more complicated, but I just took that premise. So this is an example of one that we used in a housing unit that I built. So in DOC, the DC DOC, one side of one facility had classroom space, treatment space. The others had been built in the 30s, and it was designed to warehouse bodies. There was no programming space whatsoever. So you may teach in spaces like this, right? So what we did is took a housing unit, and we used the common area and the one-day room as educational space, And then everybody in the housing unit had to have some sort of goal. It was either their GED, it was college, it was a vocational certification, or it was getting ready for reentry. But everybody had to have an outcome. And then we put together, I put older men in the unit for the younger folks as peer coaches, and then each teacher was assigned a small group. So you had a peer coach, a teacher. Then we were able to get case management officers on board. So you had a little multidisciplinary team for real working with each student, right? And what we did is had periodic meetings where we sat down and said, what's your goal? Your goal is to make, 70% on all of your GED work this week or whatever, this month or whatever. And then we also did it for behavioral. We'll say, look, I think we're having a little problem with respect. So we're going to operationally define what respect looks like for you. And then you do it with the student, right? And then we'd say, so what's our goal this month? Our goal is that I'll have, less than 3 write-ups for respect, disrespect this, whatever it is, right? But you're setting goal. And then you hand them the choice menu. And the choice menu has on it things that they can choose to earn when they hit their goal. They can only, we usually just said one. So I don't know about y'all, I never had a giant budget either. Just didn't have a lot of money. So the choice menu ended up being what we could get, what we had on hand, how many students we had. So if 65 people chose one thing, do we have 65 of those? And if we don't, we have to say first come, first serve. Once people have chosen that, we take it off the list. So it's some juggling on this one. But we also came out with a lot of things that didn't cost anything other than time and compassion. Right. So this is an example of one we used. I think we had about maybe 100 students in this particular group. And so they could choose from, and also on an incentive choice menu, you should have a nice balance of tangible items, some self-help or reflective, something that they can use to better themselves, and something social. It's good if you can do that. So what we did is we had Just Mercy, Brian Stevenson's books donated. We put those on the incentive menu. We had a whole bunch of Zen coloring books and some watercolor markers that were allowed in that particular housing unit. We put that on there. Taking a photograph and sending it home to your family didn't cost us anything, just permission, right, to be able to send that home. And the student signing, the adult student signing the waiver that was okay. That was huge, popular one. Interview skills development workshop. This is a one-on-one workshop with one of our career coach team members or partners that worked with them on their interviewing skills. And it's amazing how many times you'll have something you think, oh gosh, they're all going to pick this or that, and then they'll pick something that really benefits them. Because again, adult learners are like, what's in it for me? I'm going for that. I was fortunate in this particular this was in DC DOC as well, this choice menu, and we used Origin tablets. I don't know if you've met any of the Origin folks, but it's just a education platform tablet, and it does have a virtual classroom app on it. It's all secure, it doesn't go out to the internet or anything. So we could do a lot of these on the incentive menu, and we had a lady that volunteered to be the career coach, and then she just made appointments with the students on the tablet, and their one-on-one was virtual. So she wasn't having to come in to the facility all the time, but if you have to do that, then you just make that happen. I'm going to skip the next one because I'm going to talk about it. Earbuds with microphones. We had a whole bunch we bought because they had those tablets, and so we were like, instead of making them buy them from commissary, we put them on the incentive choice menu, because if you broke your earbuds and you didn't have $7 to spend on commissary, you could use it for this. Same thing with a hygiene pack. We purchased the same hygiene packs that were in commissary so that the students who didn't have enough money to buy hygiene packs could actually earn them if they wanted to through their behavior or academic goals. Virtual field trip, that was also on the tablet. This one was crazy. One time I was talking to a student and they were like, he asked me a question. I was like, you have to ask Miss Williams, but she's not here this week. He goes, oh no, it's because she's on vacation in Fiji. And I'm like, how do you know Miss Williams on it? He's like, Dr. Lopez, we took a field trip to Fiji yesterday. And on her vacation, she carved out 30 minutes and found a historian in Fiji who sat down and talked to him and then took them on this walking tour. Yeah. And I was like, nobody invited me. Just saying. But the students got to go to Fiji. But we had that one was really popular because teachers would volunteer to put that on the incentive menu and say, I'm hiking in Sugarloaf Mountain in Virginia or Maryland. I can't remember which state it's in. Yeah, Maryland. And then we'd take students on the hike, right? Um, Learn to read music. Who knew? But we had a special ed teacher that was working for us in a different capacity, who was also an opera singer. He left us to go get his master's in opera. I didn't know that, but he came out and said, "Hey, you know what I could do? I could teach them to read music." And so he always put something up there. Cornhole challenge. All we did is put, you know how this one goes, because one of my team members, one of my employees, who's now one of my nonprofit partners, he's let's see, 6'5", because he always says he's 6'9", if that tells you anything about how he is. He's 6'5", and I swear to goodness he has an 8-foot wingspan. And on cornhole, he was just a dead, like one time he just randomly threw it behind him and made it in the hole. And these are all adult students, they're like, what? He's cheating. Like, how can he cheat? We're seeing him. So he put cornhole challenge on there every time, and there was always a group of students that wanted to do that. So this coffee, drink, and pastry of choice plus a 1-hour chat with me, that was one of the very first menus we did that I was like, let's just try something that's free. It wasn't really free, but I donated the coffee pods, and I just took a Keurig on a little cart and had some little creamers, and then I would make them coffee, and then had a bunch of donuts that were donated, and then I would just sit and talk, chat, just about anything for an hour. So out of 100 students, 66 chose that. And for like 3 weeks, I was like, yeah, right, more coffee. And my team was like, there needs to be some decaf on that cart. This is crazy. And my boss was like, are you ever going to work again? I'm like, shut up. I'm doing good work, right? And he's like, okay, this is too much caffeine. But what it said to us was, I was just racking my brain to try to think of something kind of free. And what we realized after that is they almost exclusively picked the social items, because they really wanted the connection. I had another teacher that later, she put spades tournament on there every time, and man, they were serious about their spades. Another man put dominoes. I mean, because it wasn't just about the game, right? It was about the human connection, sitting with staff. And then what do you think that did to our culture? It flipped it, right? Even with officers, because then I had officers coming in and said, well, if you really need another thing on that choice menu, I could, I could do this. And I'm like, oh yeah, let's try it. And then he goes out, you're like, yes. But it changed everything. And then if you didn't meet your goal and you didn't get that incentive, what we did is like what we always do in IEP meetings or behavioral meetings, is MDT meetings, and we said, so do we need to extend that? And then let's review what respect looks like and where you fell off the wagon. And now I'm going to model it for you. I need you to model it for me. All the things we do as teachers, right? When somebody doesn't hit a skill, we reteach it, we extend it and say, okay, we'll give you another 2 weeks or whatever, and then you can earn that incentive. And the other thing about incentives, if you give them something tangible, you don't take it away, right? They earned it. You just keep moving on. But the choice menu in behavioral was excellent, because if you pick one thing to give everybody, somebody cares about it, somebody couldn't give a crap about it, right? So they're not going to work for it. But when they get to choose what they're going to work for, and of course, they're adults, so they started giving us suggestions of what could go on there, which is also great because they're going to work for it. But this one is just a straight up list of, you get to choose one thing or two things or whatever. Any thoughts on that? Yeah. Yeah, it works great. All right. Let's, what time is this over? I forgot. 1? Okay, great. All right, let's build a quick menu together. All right, so you can either work in pairs or you can work by yourself. And then folks at home who are working with us virtually, you can just drop your ideas in the, I'm not talking to you. You can drop your ideas in the chat. All right, so our objective is to identify and describe the main idea in a nonfiction text. I thought we did math and science and social studies, so now I'm going to force you to do language arts, which is my favorite. So identify and describe the main idea in a nonfiction text. Take that however you want. Let's say that's what you're teaching. So I want you to think about, written responses, visual tasks, kinesthetic, auditory, any of those things. And then I want you to brainstorm a couple of tasks that you would put on a menu. It could be something you already use in your classroom, that's fine. But what we're going to do is kind of report out here in a minute, so you're going to get ideas from each other. So a couple of tasks, one or two tasks that you could put on a choice menu if you were teaching that objective. Good? Any questions? Any questions online? All right. To it, and then we'll just give a few minutes for this and come right back. And yes, I'm going to steal your ideas. So. That's what teachers do, right? All right, I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to wrap it up. All right. Do we have any brave souls that want to go first? Anybody want to share? One activity you came up with. What'd you come up with? Okay, here you go.
Good. Yeah, she had mentioned a bingo game, kind of similar to what you were saying about the tic tac toe. It's something that the learners will be familiar with. They kind of already know how to do their strategies and all, but yeah, something like a bingo game. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for those of you home, she was saying she didn't realize this was just for correctional classrooms, but you can use this in any. So right now in my nonprofit, we work with these 18 to 24-year-olds that are home. And we use a variety of different kinds of choice menus with them. They're learning life skills, they're learning CBT, they're learning financial literacy. They're trying to make job choices, and my two team members create all kinds of choice menus. And Annie, my daughter, was just saying that we use this with, she homeschools my grandbabies, and she uses it with the 7-year-old a lot, where there's a list in the curriculum that she uses that says, are you a book basket family? Then do you want to read? Or are you a screen time family? Would you rather watch this film? So it's kind of the same thing, right? The difference between the children and the adults, you're handing it to them and saying, get after it. Yeah. What else? Who else did something? Draw a picture. Love that. And we do know we have the artist students, right? A lot of them. Annie, you want to read one from?
Debbie Jensen said, create a rap that tells the main idea, demonstrate, and then lead the class.
Oh, right on. We also know we have a lot of rappers, right? In our adult classes. Some go on and some don't. Yes.
You could draw like a cartoon, have four different cartoons, and have only one cartoon be the correct one because it's in social studies a lot, and so you can intertwine subjects. And then also because they're very artistic, most of my students, I don't know if there's a direct correlation to being incarcerated and artistic abilities, but there is a lot of artistic abilities. And
So if you couldn't hear him, he was saying, like in social studies, you could have the student create 4 cartoons, and only one is correct. So they, have a different topic or whatever, and then you have to choose which one is, like, which one doesn't belong here, kind of thing. I love that. And it is. We do have a lot of artistic students, and I think part is that they have a lot of free time. That, and sometimes that's one way to create, is to be creative. They write poetry, they write song lyrics, they draw because they have that time. Yeah, draw. Yeah, yeah. Well, depends on in Texas. I was like, out of all the horrible things that happens in prison, that at the time I was there, they really focused on tattoos. I'm like, that's the least thing we have to worry about is somebody scratching a tattoo. But yes, you could say draw your yeah. Next, if you could work that into a lesson, that'd be a winner. Yeah. Anybody else have something? Yes.
We didn't have, I would say, really profound suggestion. No criticism to my partner here, but yeah. But we talked about for the written response, going to this, old school book report type thing that a lot of people are familiar with, comfortable with. Visual, maybe doing a collage, depending on what your class has access to. And then for demonstration, like acting it out or role play.
I saw a teacher would always put some sort of version of a movie poster. They would take she was a language arts teacher, and they loved coming up with a movie plot from, for some book or whatever. That was pretty clever. Anybody else? I know you had good stuff because I could hear you.
If someone's motivated by games, you could take like the main ideas of paragraphs and the supporting ideas and give them to them in like a deck of cards, and then they have to they have to like put the stacks of the main ideas and then supporting ideas on top of them and organize them like that.
Yeah, stealing that one. That's good. I love that. Anybody else? Y'all have anything? So I love too that I heard you talking about different ideas, which is good. Did you have any more in there? Okay, great. Thank you for our virtual folks too. All right, I'm going to wrap up so you can get out of here. Just some really quick. Did it go? I don't know why it's not going. Just some tips for success is if you've never used one, go ahead and start small. Try one menu for a unit. The thing about it is the more you use them, the more the students get used to them, and then it just flows, right? But when you start small and model how to use the menu with your students, so really be clear on how it works. Provide structure and deadlines. Be flexible and celebrate creativity. Decide if students can work individually or can work in pairs or groups. And I know in some facilities they don't like for your students to be in pairs or groups. So if you can't do that, can't do that. It's fine. Consider time and effort for activities. So make sure that what you give them can be done in the time that you've given them. And have your grading rubric and your product guidelines in place and presented to students. It's a lot of work on the front end for a lot less confusion on the back end, right? And you can use AI to help you create activities. So I'm going to show you that. So I use ChatGPT a lot. I don't use it for writing because I love to write and I don't want to lose my chops, so I write a lot. So I don't use it for that, but I use it for a lot of idea generation. So one thing you can do is use ChatGPT to come up with the activities on your menu if you want. So the more specific you are, I don't know if you've used AI, the more specific you are with AI, the better your results are. So you can upload documents as well for better clarification. So if you have a syllabus that you've used or a lesson plan, you can always upload that and tell it you want to create the activities based on that lesson plan. You can use summaries. ChatGPT just needs to know what your goal is and exactly what you want. And the clearer you are, just like you are with students with it, the better your results. I always ask for more than I need so I can choose, or I use it as a springboard. And I just want to remind you that AI is designed to please you. So it's going to give you whatever you ask for, and it's okay to ask it. I want to do a choice menu on such and such novel. Are you familiar with that novel? If you're not, it's okay to tell me that. And sometimes it'll say, I'm not really familiar, but this is what I found online. And then you're like, maybe I need to go somewhere else, right? But just remember, it's there to please you. And if a source is online, you can ask it, are you familiar with this source? And give it the URL, and it'll come back and say, oh, yes, I am. And it'll give you a quick summary of it so you know. Okay, here's the prompt I put in for a tic-tac-toe, activities for a tic-tac-toe choice menu. I would like to generate activities for a tic-tac-toe choice menu for a science fiction language arts unit where the objectives are students will make and explain inferences based on the written work. Students will show comprehension by summarizing a story. Students will write to explain, describe, narrate, or entertain. Students will recognize and analyze story plot and problem resolution. All activities should be created at the apply or analyze levels of Bloom's revised taxonomy, and there should be a variety of modalities included: reading, writing, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile. Students are adult age and are incarcerated, so be mindful of including any tools like scissors or technology that they will not have access to. Please create 12 activities that I can choose from and identify the level of Bloom's taxonomy and the modalities for me. And this is what I got back. Boom, right? So I don't use ChatGPT to do all my work for me, but on creative work where none of these are going to be earth-shattering to you. It's going to be stuff you know. It's just somebody else put all your thoughts in a list for you. And you can use it that way. And now I have 12 to choose from. I just need 9. Well, I really only use 8 because I'm going to use a free choice in the middle of my tic-tac-toe, so I can choose from those 12 and save the other ones, right? So use ChatGPT or your AI tools in that way to save you time. Now then, if I choose 8 of those, I can go back in and say, can you give me some suggestions on what the product guidelines should look like? And can you look at Lori Westerfall's work as an example or whatever you're using? And then I could say, now could you create a grading rubric for me? And ChatGPT will do that. And then you tweak it. right? But it takes a lot of your at-home prep time away and gives you something solid that's geared toward your objectives. So cheating in a really smart way, using the tools that you have. All right, here are challenges and solutions I hear. Too many choices. You don't have to give them 12 choices. Give them 6, give them 9, give them 3. It's your class. You decide how many you want to give them. Or I've heard people say it's too hard to grade. Use those rubrics and then it's not hard. Or students won't choose the hardest task. Usually they will, but you can also add point values or require one challenge task. You can force them to not just choose easy. So it's yours. You can design it. And that's it. I'm going to leave these Lori Westphal books up here if you want. When I first found her, she only went up to 8th grade, but she has them from pre-K all the way through 8th grade for subject matter. Now I noticed when I went online to find stuff for you, she goes all the way through 12th grade. She has like a whole book about physics, a whole book about chemistry, a whole book about economics, a whole book, so she has a lot of choices out there. It has everything you need in there to create whatever you want. And she also has a whole set for students with special learning needs and has activities in there. So again, you could buy 1 or 2 of these and then use ChatGPT to go from there, and you'd have a guideline. And if you have any questions or you have great ideas and you want to share them or you just want to chat, you can find me. My consulting business is called Past the Edges Consulting. Seemed like a good idea when I named it, but now it's super long. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Amy Lopez. Contact me. I love, love, love. Annie, do I love talking about choice menus? I talk about it a lot. So anytime you want to chat or run an idea or think about things, I'm more than happy to do that. Thank you. So excited to see you. Bye.